It is my utmost pleasure to welcome our guest of honor, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Belgium, Mr. Alexander de Croo, who will be introduced properly by our President, Karel de Gucht. Please.
Yes, thank you very much, Excellencies, Prime Minister. It is a pleasure to introduce you, not only because you are a distinguished alumnus of the Free University of Brussels, also my university, and you are also a staunch supporter of our school. He has also been around at the senior level of government for over a decade. You were responsible for budget, for international development. Since 2012, you have been Vice Prime Minister, and since 2020, you are Prime Minister of our country. Now, this government has led the country effectively through the pandemic and the second shockwave triggered by Russia's aggression against Ukraine, which is continuing. And last month, Prime Minister personally took delivery of Belgium's first F-35 aircraft. This underscores that Belgium is a country that has real skin in the game when it comes to deterrence and security. And this matters in today's geopolitical environment. For deterrence is the key to ensuring that revisionist powers understand they cannot stand to gain from conflict. And this requires not only military power, but also sound economic statecraft. Now, ultimately, security is about power, whether you like it or not. It's the power to prevent others from harming you. It's the power to make your own choices, and it is the power to make your vital interests being protected and respected. Now, in that context, the Belgian presidency of the Council, who builds on the EU's Indo-Pacific strategy. As the Prime Minister knows, the Indo-Pacific is a priority for CSDS and for our school. The Belgian presidency will seek to strengthen relations with EU's important partners, which is something we are trying to advance here today as well, but also to reduce Europe's strategic dependence on Chinese suppliers via adequate diversification and the use of trade defense instruments when needed. And we are again close to that with my beloved solar panels. So we have ended up again in an era of great power competition. That's what we are now in, which is much more early 20th century and late 19th century concept, but we are again in that kind of era. And the real challenge for Europe is, are we up to that task? Can we really play in that concert of great powers? I remember that some time ago, one of our professors, together with some colleagues, wrote an article on the inadvertent great power. Are we really inadvertent, or have we in the meantime changed considerably? I would argue yes, but to further explain this and convince you, I now give the floor to the Prime Minister, to Alexander de Croo. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone, and dear distinguished audience, Mr. and Mrs. Ambassadors and professors and students. I'm extremely happy to be invited at an event of the Free University of Brussels, as Karel said well. My university, I spent some great years there, and as all of us, we are linked to our alma mater. And this invitation, I get many invitations, but there was two good reasons to attend this one. And Karel de Gucht was not the only reason why I thought it was an interesting event to attend. I think, Mr. de Gucht, as you said, we are in a world of great powers, and it is a concept that was a bit coined by Mr. Kissinger. And more than ever, it is for us Europeans also a bit a rude awakening. Our view of how the world should be was one which, with the view of today, we could say was maybe a bit naive. Our view was that everyone believed in democracy, that everyone believed that free trade was, economically speaking, the most efficient way of organizing things, that everyone believes in multilateralism, and that we all shared that. Some called it the end of history, some called it the flat world. The world has gone in a different direction. We might not like it, but we have to adapt. What I see is that the European Union is adapting, and is adapting quite rapidly. Ursula von der Leyen spoke about the geopolitical European Commission, and I think we've had that. And we've had that because of what has happened over the past 3 years and the pandemic and the war in Ukraine and the tensions in the Middle East and so many things that have happened throughout the world, but also because we understand that to do on what the main demands are from a European population, which is prosperity and security, we have to play a more active role in the world. If we don't, we bear the consequences. I was in Gaza and in Jerusalem 2 months ago. And I remember that some of the criticism in Belgium was, why do you go there? And why do you think it's important to go there? Well, first of all, I think from a human perspective, it is the right thing to do. And if we see that international humanitarian law is not being respected, I think we need to speak out. But beyond that, if things turn wrong, we bear the consequences. If there is tensions, we will have the migration flows. And at that point, I said, if we would have problems in trade, we will pay the consequences, and that is what we have seen over the past weeks. The Houthi rebels attacking commercial vessels in the Red Sea has an impact, and the Red Sea is today 20% of global container traffic is going through the Red Sea. For the link between the European Union and the Asian continent, it is 40% of the trade between those two parts of the world that are going through there. It has led to inflation, it has led to uncertainty, and we've seen the consequences. We have had in Belgium a few factories that are closing down. Volvo Cars Ghent has closed down a few days just because, the just-in-time system, of course, works if the trade is seamless, and it was not. Now, the Red Sea is not part of the Indo-Pacific, but you could say virtually it is part of the Indo-Pacific because it makes the link of the Indo-Pacific with Europe possible. Now, we see tensions there, but you could also say that in the Indian Oceans, there is tensions, and you could also say that's the case in the South China Sea. Just using this as a scene setter, that in a few topics that unite us, prosperity, security, I'll talk about climate change afterwards, having links one with another and playing a geopolitical role is crucial. Also because, of course, the world has evolved. The center of gravity of the world has shifted to the east, being it the economic center of gravity or even the demographic center of gravity. The global weight of countries such as China, such as India, such as Vietnam, Indonesia, and so on has increased, and if you look at the demographics, will continue to increase. What we have seen in the Indo-Pacific region is regional hegemots who show their military capacity, open naval base, and all that has an influence on regional stability. On top of it, this is a region which is particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, and it is quite clear that the effects of climate change also have a very strong geopolitical influence. So it's no accident that in 2021, the European Union launched its strategy for cooperation with the Indo-Pacific. Now, we all know that the European Union is not a champion in hard power. Not today, not tomorrow. Will it be the case in the future? Might very well be, but let's talk about today. Now, of course, beyond hard power, there is a broad range of topics which we cover. What is important for that cooperation strategy with the Indo-Pacific, and that makes it very distinctive from other strategies, is that it is not directed against one specific country. So our strategy is a strategy of cooperation with a broad view, with a lens of trying to find what we have in common with any country in the region, or almost any country in the region. That makes it different than the strategy that other countries have followed. We are not forcing to make a choice, for example, between the United States and China. And you could contrast that, for example, with the AUKUS nuclear marine strategy, which has a different perspective. I'm not putting one on top of the other. I'm not saying that one is superior to the other, but just explaining that the strategy we have is a very different one. We are economically linked, but some of the economic links we have are unbalanced. You might have seen that I've been in Beijing 2 weeks ago. Met the Prime Minister, met President Xi Jinping. It had been 8 years since a Belgian Prime Minister had been in China, and this is definitely too long. We need to be present there more often. Number one topic discussed there, of course, is the trade relationships. I mean, we European countries, we are an important customer. 600 billion Chinese sell 600 billion of their goods in the European Union. I'm not against that. I'm not against it as long as there is reciprocity. I believe in free trade. I think that balanced free trade in a de-risked way, the way Ursula von der Leyen has put it, is the most sensible way of organizing the world. I'm not against the fact that investments can take place here. I'm not against the fact that M&A activities can take place here. I just merely want the same for European firms in China, and this is today not the case. And this was my main point. Opening the markets, opening the Chinese market, is a crucial thing, and long-lasting trade imbalances are not good. They are economically not good. They are, from a security perspective, not good either. So our pleading for reciprocity in the opening of the market, I think, is a sensible one, but should not divert from the fact that we as European countries also need to work on our own competitiveness. The not complete opening of the market is one element, but we have to be competitive, and there's a few domains where, if you compare it to China, our competitiveness today is not at the level that it should be. That is why in Europe we have, for example, asked Mr. Draghi and Mr. Letta to come up with reports on how we can reinforce our single market and how we can work on our worldwide competitiveness. But obviously, we have to look beyond China. China is an economic and geopolitical force in the world, but we partner in a broad way with, for example, the ASEAN countries. As said, that partnership is not specifically on the hard power, but there's so many more domains on which we can work, even in the security domain. Collaboration on fighting against cyber attacks, marine security and capacity building, and working together on fighting climate change. And in fighting climate change, we have a lot to offer. We have a lot to offer because we have a very ambitious fighting climate change agenda in the European Union, but also because we have developed quite some industry in that domain. An industry which brings solutions to the table which are good for the world. Maybe as a conclusion topic. Yes, we are a distant part of the world, and the junction between those two distant parts of the world is not an easy one today. And we might be confronted with new tensions in the future. That could happen. But I am convinced that the Indo-Pacific is part of a global community's collective future. So, as we are, as a European Union, and our commitment to actively engaging is a rightful one, and we know that in the next week, a few events on the ministerial level are happening, and I think it shows the importance that we attach to that relationship. As I said in the start, we as a European Union waking up in what you could call a Hobbesian world, given the war in Ukraine and given the instability that we have in our own neighborhood, it is quite clear that the European hard power, if it develops, will rather be on the European continent. But there is so many other domains in which we can work. Of course, trade being one, but also other forces of cooperation, other domains of cooperation on the security level, also working together in fighting climate change, also working together on the values for which we stand. So the EU strategy towards the Indo-Pacific is a broad one and is a varied one and is maybe a bit more a subtle one than the strategy of other great powers that you see in the world. Indeed, we live in a world of great powers. We Europeans understand that it is in our and in the interest of the world that we play a role in a world of great powers. And let me conclude with that. We do this with an open view. We do this with a view of collaboration without forcing the other side to choose for one over the other. I think that distinguishes us from the rest of the world. As Europeans, we believe in multilateralism. And we believe that multilateralism still has a lot to offer to the world. Probably it will need to improve. Probably it will need to become more effective. Probably it will need to bring more results. But in this geopolitical world, more than ever, our view is that we should not turn our back to the rest of the world. Quite the contrary, but do it in a bit less naive way, in a more de-risked way, but also in a way where we know who our partners are. In the world of today, it's good to have friends. People who don't have friends feel not very secure, and we consider the Indo-Pacific world a world where we have a lot of friends. Thank you.